Carbon is very important to all living organisms. The carbon cycle has two main pathways, the biological pathway and the geological pathway. The biological pathway is rapid and describes how carbon travels through living organisms in the atmosphere. The geological pathway is very slow and shows the long-term storage of carbon in the land, sediment, oceans, and atmosphere.
This picture is an overview of the carbon cycle. It shows both the biological and geological pathways, specifically whether carbon is in the form of CO2 or carbon dioxide in the atmosphere or bicarbonate as in our world's oceans. Carbon travels throughout the atmosphere to the land, to organisms, to the oceans, and specifically through processes like photosynthesis and respiration. For example, producers take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and then convert it into organic forms for consumers to use for cellular respiration, and then CO2 is released back into the atmosphere. And specifically, the biological pathway incorporates the process of photosynthesis, cellular respiration, decomposition. And photosynthesis occurs when plants take in CO2 and water and they release oxygen, and the products are converted into organic forms such as carbohydrates, which in turn are used by consumers, and they break down the carbohydrates for energy and then in turn release carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. And cellular respiration also contributes to dissolved CO2 in the ocean. And rising CO2 levels are also hindering the ability of our aquatic ecosystems to function and for organisms to survive and thrive in their environments. This also ties to the process of decomposition, because as animals and organisms in the ocean die off, they form sedimentary rock in the ocean floors, which in turn becomes limestone, and limestone is actually one of the largest reservoirs of carbon. Specifically in the oceans, phytoplankton, or microscopic marine plants that form the base of the marine food chain, use carbon to make shells of calcium carbonate. The shells settle to the bottom of the ocean. When phytoplankton die and are buried in the sediments, the shells of phytoplankton and other creatures can become compressed over time as they are buried and are often eventually transformed into limestone, as I said. And it is the non-calcium containing organic matter that is transformed into fossil fuels, which also ties into human impact, as producers can't compensate for the amount of CO2 being released by the burning of fossil fuels and wood by humans. Also, the amount of carbon taken up by photosynthesis and released back to the atmosphere by respiration each year is about 1,000 times greater than the amount of carbon that moves through the geological cycle on an annual basis.
Next, we have the geological pathway. Carbon can be stored for long periods of time by the atmosphere, large bodies of water, ocean sediment, fossil fuels, and in the Earth's interior. Carbon is stored in soil as organic carbon from decomposed plants and animals. Fossil fuels are stored underground and are created by decomposed plants. Fossil fuels take millions of years to form and are burned off at very high rates by humans, which releases massive amounts of CO2. In the atmosphere, carbon dioxide combines with rain to form carbonic acid. When it rains, this is carried in rivers and reacts with rocks in a process called weathering, where bicarbonate is released. Unlike sulfuric acid rain, carbonic acid rain is beneficial and essential to the carbon cycle and therefore Earth. In addition, CO2 is formed through subduction and released in volcanic eruptions. Subduction is when one tectonic plate moves under another and carbon-containing sediments from the ocean are moved deep into the Earth. Carbonate in water combines with calcium to create calcium carbonate, which is a major part of shells in marine organisms. When these organisms die, they decompose and sink, where they will become part of the ocean floor sediment. This sediment over time becomes limestone, which is the largest carbon reservoir. When limestone is moved closer to Earth's interior through subduction, it gets very hot and carbon dioxide will eventually be released from it. Last, the level of CO2 in the atmosphere is influenced by the reservoir of carbon in the ocean and vice versa.
Fossil fuels are being burned more rapidly than they can be produced, so they're considered non-renewable. Sad. The amount of CO2 being absorbed or used is not compared to how much CO2 is released. Sad. So the CO2 concentration in the air is increasing and the temperature in the atmosphere is rising. Super sad. So in conclusion, there are two main pathways in the carbon cycle. The biological pathway, in which the two most important parts are cellular respiration and photosynthesis, and the geological pathway, in which the largest reservoirs of carbon are in the ocean and in limestone. And lastly, and more importantly, and in a sense more urgently, is a huge impact humans are making. No, more like destroying the cycle that has been carrying on for thousands of years. So in a sense, if you haven't seen this at work, then you must find yourself Define the cord that connects you from your being and your presence to the earth and every living creature that is on it. To be one with nature is to be intimate with the human race, as the human race has been created the earth as it is today. It is an abusive relationship that the earth has withstood. The cord is fragile, and the human race has frayed to the last string. In order to have peace with one another, we must stop the destruction of our earth, then we can truly be peace with ourselves. And if not, then, in a sense, we destroy us.
Fourth most abundant element, we all need carbon to survive. Travels to the land, living in sky cool. How does it move around? Absorbed by plants, photosynthesis is key. Converted by plants and into organic form. Consumed by
Animals,
carbon seems so
crucial.
Decompassed, started in sedimentary rock forms. That's one major way carbon is stored.
Releasing the atmosphere of CO2.
And the cycle carries on. And the cycle carries on. And the cycle carries on. But what about pollution by humans like us? The fossil fuels are burning. I'm shaking my head like no. Stomping my feet like no. Let's work together. Stop climate change now. Global warming is not okay. Carbon makes it warmer in the atmosphere. Carbon makes it warmer in the atmosphere. So many sources of CO2, like volcanoes and in the ocean. But Earth has its limitations, the greenhouse effect is rising. Balance is how the cycle should be. Equal CO2 is released and absorbed. The carbon levels are
Rising,
now ecosystems are
dying.
fossil fuels burn and the ozone layer is thinning. The Earth is calling out for our help.
We continue to burn coal and oil.
And the cycle carries on. And the cycle carries on. And the cycle carries on. But what about pollution by humans like us? The fossil fuels are burning. I'm shaking my head like no. Stomping my feet like no. Let's work together. Stop climate change now. Global warming is not okay. Carbon makes it warmer in the atmosphere. Carbon makes it warmer in the atmosphere. But what about pollution by humans like us? The fossil fuels are burning. I'm shaking my head like no. Stomping my feet like no. We work together, stop climate change now. Global warming is not okay. Carbon makes it warmer in the atmosphere. Carbon makes it warmer in the atmosphere.